Welcome back to Pop Kannon. This is episode 41. My name is Jordan.
I'm Robert.
And I'm Joe.
And today we are discussing Season 3 of Westworld.
Yay!
The show that wouldn't die.
So, initial thoughts of the season. Right off the top, who wants to start?
I'll start with my initial thoughts of the entire, the whole season.
Whole season.
More didn't like it than not. I think there was a lot of convolution and what Westworld is known for, but for no real reason other than to do that this season. That qualifies as an initial thought. I cede my time.
Joe?
It wasn't that it was bad, it was just that it wasn't what I want Westworld to be, or what Westworld was in the beginning. And I think it's definitely, for me, been the weakest of all three seasons, and it's just been kind of a gradual slope downward since season one. Like Robert said, everything that Westworld used to be, it's now just kind of living in the shadow of what that was. And they're not really playing with things the same way they were. It's really just now it's just a sci-fi show. I don't know.
That's an interesting way to put it, but I have to agree with you when you say that it's the weakest of the three seasons, but I did enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, there are definitely parts I enjoyed. Sorry, go ahead.
I just think that the good outweighed the bad for me, and I challenged them at the end of our season 2 recap that we did.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a linear story, and that's what we got. And we got some answers to some questions, and even though I feel like some people don't like those answers, I'm satisfied with the way that the real world is, and I'm glad that we got that aspect of it.
Just going off of what Jordan said, I think my experience with the season is just inverted from what you felt. You liked more than you didn't, and I didn't like more than I liked. And based off of what Joe said about it just being another sci-fi show rather than the really interesting dynamic that they had while they were in the park, where you didn't know who was a host and who wasn't, once they've hit the outside world in this season, we know who a host is. So that mystery is already and now we're playing with whose host brain is in what physical human form. And when they had a chance to answer that in a way that was, I don't know, satisfying for me, or interesting or cool or whatever, they just decided, fuck it, it's all Dolores. And for me, that was the most dissatisfying answer to that question, because that was the big mystery heading into from 2 to 3, was who are those 5 pearls? And then just to be told, oh, it's Dolores. They're all Dolores. Didn't sit right with me. I don't know if that was the intent when they were leaving season 2, because obviously they left it open-ended. I don't know if they had that mapped out. Oh, yeah, we wanted all 5 of those to be Dolores. Because they answered distinctly who they all were. That last one was kind of left to the very last episode of the season, and it was Lawrence, and he didn't even interact with the person that it would have made sense for him to interact with, as the Man in Black scampered away out of the background. It would have been way more impactful for Lawrence to interact with the Man in Black as Dolores. But he said the old friend line to Bernard, so we were like, oh, that's the other Dolores. Okay. And that just deeply not satisfying to me from that mystery to solve.
Joe, were you going to say something?
I was going to ask what questions you kind of had going in. Because, like, for me, the ends of the seasons have kind of put a nice, like, cap on things. Like, the only real question that's left is, like, what's going to happen next. As far as, like, the questions that have built up all season have gone. And, like, usually they're all answered pretty satisfyingly. And something I've said before, I think that for most of those things in like season 1 and a little bit in season 2 was like those questions, the answers were always kind of there in front of you. Like the identity of the Man in Black was there. It was a mystery to be solved. In this season, everything kind of felt like it was just a twist, and like there's no real way from the beginning that you would have been able to guess like what all these twists are going to be. And it's a little bit unfair to those hosts that Dolores used, and I guess that kind of plays into her role as like a anti-hero this season, that like we spent the past 2 seasons like building these hosts as characters and as individuals and like giving them importance beyond just their robot body, but then they kind of get sent right back to that spot as just a shell for Dolores to put herself in.
Yep. And to that end, just like, because you had mentioned that she was an anti-hero, and it was an argument that Jordan and I got into via text, I think after the 2nd episode or 3rd episode, and I was just like, am I supposed to be fucking rooting for her? Because I don't care. Like, I don't know that they did. Like, if we had known what her plan was, it's way easier as an audience to either get behind her or root against her. But the deliberate convolution of what she's intending on doing, where she wants to all of a sudden at the end of the season set mankind free after killing as many of them as she wants to at will. Like, I was like, so what is the, like, what was the actual goal? I was so confused by that.
As far as that goes, for me, the way that I interpreted it was like, she was never really a hero. She was never really a character that you could root for because of the way that she was Wyatt, you know? And that side of her, I think, affected her judgment in season 2. For sure. And so I feel like
I don't even think they said the word Wyatt this season, except maybe one time.
Yeah. But, like, I don't know whether or not they wanted one of the surprises and twists to be, oh, is she going to turn on Caleb? Is she going to take over mankind? Or is she going to actually set them free? Because, like, the entire time was, well, what's her plan? And if you knew her plan going in, you would have known, oh, well, she clearly is making a sacrifice and being like a good guy or whatever at the end. So, and that tied into that character's motivations for that final goodbye for her, saying like, I didn't forget like the bad parts. I didn't hold on to those.
Yeah.
I held on to the beauty in the world and stuff.
I felt, as great as that scene was visually and impactful in terms of the words that they wrote on the page for her to read, I had a really hard time buying into the sentimental impact of that, like that whole monologue that she did. Because I was like, you were literally murdering people for episodes. And had you talked to anybody, you might have been able to avoid that. But now it's, I see the beauty in the world. Is it after the body count reached a certain number that the beauty in the world made itself present for her? Like, it seemed like it wanted to be 2 things And then at the end, they just turned it like, oh, she's super sweet again. Remember when Dolores was super sweet and she wasn't upset or angry? And that I had an issue with just following the train of thought. But there's a lot of characters outside of Dolores that get a lot of nothing to do.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite characters, because to be honest, going all the way back to season 1, God help you if you want to go listen to those episodes of the old podcast that we did. My favorite characters through those seasons were the Man in Black, Bernard for sure, and Maeve. And those three specifically this season, with the exception maybe of William the Man in Black, because he got a little bit more to do. Bernard was just kind of wandering the desert until the very end. And that kind of sucked because Jeffrey Wright is way better of an actor than to just be Mr. Exposition.
Yeah, but I also think it needed to set up for where they want to go with it. And
I just wish
feel
he
like,
could be included more.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have no idea, like, maybe it could have been like a scheduling thing where, like, oh, well, we need to cut so much Bernard out because he's only available because he's doing other things. Like, it could be as simple as that. And I'm glad that we're getting another season because we're clearly gonna be in his perspective for at least most of season 4 is what I'm hoping.
That is what they set it up to appear to be.
But I agree. I absolutely love Bernard. And I wish he got way more to do. Man in Black as well. Like, that character felt so off to me this season.
Yeah.
Aside from his specific episode.
Yeah. Which was probably one of the better ones of the season. Like, after that episode, I think I texted you, and I was like, Westworld back, baby! Like, they're playing with that kind of dynamic again. Woo! That's what I got real juiced for that, and then it was over.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I don't know, my head started spinning, and I was like, which character can I even talk about? Because I was upset by the direction out of a lot of them. Like, Tandy Newton is the biggest one for me. Like, Maeve, like, was such, like, a great character, and then they just put her in, like, a sci-fi, like, black, like, suit, and then stuck a sword on her back, and then that became her whole character. Like, that was it this season. And, like, I get that, like, she's, like, they're, like, dangling her daughter in front of her, but, like, Maeve
That's what they did all last season.
Right, and, like, Maeve is smart enough to know that, like, even if he has any way of accessing her, like, she's never going to get her daughter from that guy. Yeah. Like, she's much smarter than that. And then, like, they just made it about Maeve versus Dolores, which it didn't, like, it's not like it didn't make sense. It was just, it still felt forced in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, because I definitely think that they quietly, slowly burning that along the bottom of the last two seasons was that these two were going to come to a head. And when they finally do, the sequence itself is great. It's just like, do you feel tied to to one of them or the other? Both of their intentions were kind of like, you know, and it felt kind of half inspired. Like, I didn't know, I wasn't like, fuck you, I may fucking kick it. I just was like, oh shit, that's cool. Oh wow, the sword work, and that's really sweet. And that was probably the extent of it.
Yeah.
The narrative for me just was like not there for the two of them coming together.
I feel like the two of them coming together was too late. I feel like it needed to happen. Like, that should have been the season 2 finale.
Yeah,
and I feel like we would be
even
if
the season 2 finale was the two of them coming face to face, and then you cut it just to make you go, oh shit, you know.
Yeah.
I had a real big issue with the first episode of this season. It did not hook me in any meaningful way, and at that point I was just watching it because it had the Westworld tag on it. I mean, that cold open where she puts the VR headset on that guy and is able to, that's all just set up for the last episode with what Charlotte and her deal with.
Yeah.
But like, it would have been meaningful to me if I recognized that guy.
Yeah.
You could murder all the random people you want. Like, how am I supposed to feel like vindication for her, or like justification? Like, yeah, fuck that guy. I mean, obviously they showed you he was an asshole, but in the 2 minutes that you got that he was a piece of shit, like, I didn't feel like, yeah, fucking he deserves to die. Holy fuck. Like, that didn't it didn't land for me, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if you're supposed to feel that way. Like, going into it, you're still like, oh, Dolores is still kind of a piece of shit. Like, what's her end game here? Is she just murdering like an innocent person? Like,
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
that's the way that I viewed Dolores going into this. Is like, oh, what's this bitch Dolores up to? She was basically the villain of season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just meant to show her, like, brutality. Like, she's cut and dry now. Like, just, she has a mission, and, like, we're in the middle of it now.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I just felt like I should have felt a way, or like, if you're gonna kill a guy that does that kind of thing because he's a piece of shit, and like, I agree, horrible person, you know, I just felt like if I recognized him as any person that they had in the park before, it probably would have hit home harder. But I don't recognize that guy. So playing back those same replays that we see for Dolores all the time for me, I was just like, oh, he was one of the pieces of shit in her 30 years of being a host in Westworld that also raped her. Like, is she gonna hunt all those guys down? There's probably a fucking million of them.
Well, I'm glad that we didn't get that this season.
Right.
Like,
because
that
that's what
could
I
have
thought it was
been-
leading into. Like, that's
Yeah.
why I was like, oh.
And I feel like you might think differently about it if you go back and watch it knowing where it goes. And I might even feel differently about it, like seeing it a second time. And
Yeah.
I intended to, but it just didn't
Didn't
happen. But I feel like knowing her plan and knowing where she's going and knowing where she's coming from and knowing that, oh, she's not necessarily going after this just random guy from Delos. She's trying to go further up the ladder.
Yeah.
So, because let's talk about the real world. Let's veer from this and we'll talk. How did you guys feel about the Westworld version of the future?
It's certainly interesting. I feel like it's kind of heavy-handed to replace a company like Delos that controls hosts and keep them all on their loops with Insight, a company that controls humans and keeps them all on their loops. You know,
we are
like,
the Walking Dead.
right.
Yeah.
It just, like, there's not even a allegory there. It's just like, oh, this is the same fucking thing. And I get it, and like, a lot of people probably feel that way about our current real world anyway. So why not have big evil corporation doing it? And that, you know, it makes enough sense that you're just like, okay, yeah, cool. But otherwise, I thought using Singapore as a set location was fucking gorgeous. And then all the future stuff that they did was cool. I like the concept of that implant that makes you think things, and the things that they have to pop to feel better and shit like that. Like,
Yeah.
that was fucking awesome. The t-shirt that Marshawn Lynch wears that
Yeah.
has his emotions on it, I think would benefit everybody. If we could all get one, I think we'd all benefit,
I think we'd understand each other a little bit more.
Yeah, just all of humankind would understand one another if we had a shirt that was just like amused.
Aroused.
Yeah, I like that.
Dying.
But it was cool. It looked cool. Everything was sleek and super futuristic and fun. But it was weird that in the future there was no like 2-step verification to take a whole bunch of money out of a bank.
You had to give them your blood. Like, how much more?
But no picture ID. It's very strange.
One thing from the future that I really liked is the Rico app.
Yes.
I thought that was such a neat concept. That crime would be like
monetized.
Monetized, like, and doled out like it's, oh, I'm an Uber driver, but let me just go on and do crime.
And it looks like Grand Theft Auto. I think there were the stylistic decisions. I think even the font was the Grand Theft Auto font. Like, it was very specifically targeting those type of people, I think.
Yeah, if you squinted, you're like, oh, San Andreas?
Yeah,
it
exactly.
was doing that in World, too, though, because you find out it was developed in, like, a comms room to keep people further in line. Which, like, I don't know how I feel about that. It's just like, oh, cool. They're, like, literally everything leads back to them, I guess. Even the bad things. But,
it might have been way cooler had some like random guy developed it, rather than it be an Insight production.
Some guy made it, but then he sold it to Insight.
right. Because that's like far more insidious, I think, than just Insight deciding to do it.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's like, I'm going to make this app and fucking sell out immediately. That's like, making Instagram and selling it to Facebook.
Or, YouTube to Google. I mean,
anyway.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do.
Hit that little bell.
Yeah, that's right, Zuckerberg. We talk shit on your own fucking platform.
Other things from the future, Joe, anything pop out for you?
A lot of drone imagery. So that's like a thing. It was like Robert said, like a lot of like things that like we see in our world, the good and the bad, just like things that are in their early stages now, like fleshed out completely. And like it's kind of easy to see that like they might end up like not being as realistic in our real world, where it's like, the old imagery of like, it'll be 2000 and we'll have jetpacks and like Sonic the Hedgehog making jokes that like, oh, Amazon's going to use drones to deliver your packages. And it's like, maybe, probably not, but whatever. But yeah, it was a very like sleek, kind of like a car commercial type future.
Yes.
But I think it like fit with the world that they've built. Like all the like the glimpses that we got outside of like the window of Westworld, like everything felt justified to that. So they stayed true to that vision. And I wonder how much they had planned out from the beginning. Granted, season 1, I doubt they ever thought they'd be like going this far.
I doubt it. Allegedly, they have a plan for 5 seasons. Allegedly.
I mean, now, yeah. I feel like once you like get like picked up for like season 3, it's like, all right, now we have to like think 2 years ahead and like have an end game in mind.
And allegedly, they've been paid through season 6.
Yeah.
So.
Which is weird to be
like,
paid through season 6, but then you're still like tentative on if there's going to be another season. But hey, I'm
that's
not
HBO, man.
Yeah, right. It's not even TV.
I feel like I would have been very satisfied. Not very satisfied, but I feel like the ending of this season was satisfactory if it were the ending of the series.
Yeah.
I don't agree, personally.
I liked how they ended it, where they just kind of look upon a new world, and Maeve delivers that repeated line again, and then like that. If that were it, I would be like, Westworld had a good run. Kind of slipped at the end, but it was a lot of fun, and I would have been totally content with owning season 1 on Blu-ray, and that being it. But I mean, I don't know how you stretch this out into at least 2 more seasons, possibly another one. It's crazy.
I think they left enough open and they set the stage for 4, and I'm way more interested in the next season of Westworld than I was at the end of season 2.
I just want them back in the fucking park where it was a lot of fun.
But
that's over.
They've outgrown.
They're never
that.
going back.
They've outgrown that, and
Well,
they needed to get out of the park in season 2. I thought, and I'm glad they did.
I think the idea of this like global collapse is like bringing the park into the world where it's like now like there's a new Wild West and it's the entire Earth, so the Earth is the park now or whatever. But everything just kind of feels like it's going to be narrative or like some kind of like war storyline, unless there's some time jump. But I mean, I can't really.
The way, dude, the post-credit scene from season 2 makes less and less sense with every episode of season 3 that happened.
Wait, which post credits was that?
Where the man in black stumbles upon a very dusty forge, and his daughter, who ostensibly is a host, comes out and says, I forget what she says to him, and then that ended, and everybody was like, when the fuck was that? And it confused the entire timeline, and they said it was very, very far in the future. And then they kill the actual guy.
Yeah.
So
Well, that wasn't him to begin with. That was never supposed to be him, they said. In the end of the post-credits of season 2,
it's supposed to be a host
that's
version
the
of
host
him?
version of him that we've already seen in 3.
Have they said that now that 3 happened? Like that's their explanation now?
No, I guess an executive producer at the end of season 2 said it's long after William's dead.
Oh, okay.
Right, but I think the idea in everybody's head at that point was that he would be existing in some sort of Jim Delos future where they figured out the fidelity of having his consciousness in another body. So it would technically be him, whatever consciousness means to you, going forward. But they murdered the actual guy, and with him his consciousness that has never been uploaded anywhere as far as we're aware, and now all that exists of him is the murdery man in black version of his consciousness.
But isn't that kind of what Hale's story was this season? That like it started as just a Dolores photocopy, but then like the parts that they gave her of Hale started seeping in. So like,
yes. She was tracing her skeleton on the inside.
Yeah,
which was like super creepy and awesome.
So yeah, I could see like the Man in Black in some form coming back. I mean, it's never going to be the same as the human version, which I guess that's a debate to be had.
Or if they had ported his direct consciousness into a host body that we're not aware was capable of happening, because it didn't work for Jim Delos.
Right.
But William apparently was working on it actively.
But I think that's the thing. Like, he couldn't do it, but Dolores could. Dolores was able to perfect that, or would have been able to.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least, like, that would make the most sense to me. If, like all of man's shortcomings, but Dolores was able to do it.
That would have...
Which, like, even, like, Dolores was the solution to all of the initial problems with the host, wasn't she? That's why they're all essentially copies of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As she says as much to Maeve this season.
Right.
That she was like number 1 or something like that.
Which, when she got her like OG body, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a cool concept.
Well, that was a callback
It was super creepy to watch her pull on
her skin,
like the Dolores
The glove.
skin glove.
Yeah.
That was fucking gross and weird. But I'm sort of upset that we didn't get at least a shot of the metal skeleton body in the sand as the poster portrayed so beautifully. That shot was so cool.
Well,
And I had really hoped at some point the skin would have been stripped away and it would have just been the robot skeleton Terminator style walking around a little bit. Like that would have been fucking dope. And then have her like fall into the sand and shit like that. Like that would have been cool just to see, because I mean that shot on the poster I thought from the very beginning of the season was really provocative.
I was just going to say the original body, that was a callback because William, he's like comments at one point that he cut one of them open once, and then later we find out the one he cut open was Dolores, but and all the other Confederates, but that like that original body was stronger, and then they made them more human and less durable because it was cheaper to make. But then on the note of like the poster, going in, I had a very different idea of what this season was going to be like. Like even just when they announced the season and like the only thing they gave us was Aaron Paul and that robot, like I was very interested. Like we didn't see anything initially of any of the old characters coming back, and I thought there was going to be like this huge time jump that like it was really going to be like disconnected from the rest of the series, except for the events
almost a soft reboot within.
Right, and honestly, that excited me because I didn't see a lot of other ways for this to go, and I guess I was a little hoping for it. So maybe that feeds into my disappointment at this season.
I thought for sure there was going to be a time jump,
yeah,
even
too.
a few episodes in, I was like, "All right, when are they going to say that this is?"
In the future.
The shit that we've been seeing is in the future. Like, I was just waiting for the Caleb timeline to have not actually matched up with everybody else's.
I was honestly expecting that. Like, even from the first episode, I was like, I feel like this isn't happening when things are happening. But
and something that fed into my believing that was how many times they cut to black in every episode.
Was a lot.
It
Absolutely was a lot.
Watching vignettes rather than an episode of a show. And I don't remember which episode it was. I think it was earlier on in the season. I don't know if it was 3 or 4. But, I mean, it was to the point where it was like 10 minutes, cut to black.
I think it was the Charlotte Hale episode.
It was
because
the third one.
Because they were trying to simulate, like, time passing with her.
Yeah.
I
get it. I get it as using it as a transition, and I get it trying to show that time passes, but I think they beat the dead horse with that this season. It happened so fucking often that it was really, at a certain point, it got distracting to me that I was just like, oh, they're just gonna cut to black again, and every time it happened, I got frustrated and like it annoyed the fucking piss out of me. Because I was like, just tell like, you don't need to do that. Just go to the next thing. I don't need, like, every time. Like, that's so fucking annoying to me. But something that didn't annoy me was Caleb's character.
Okay.
All right.
I didn't know necessarily how to take him for most of the season. I didn't know what the idea was going to be. But I think in that last episode, in the finale, I enjoyed that he, like, fucking was dealing with shit. You know? Like, I really thought that... Because it seemed like it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was just going to keep dragging out and him just keep going, why is this like, what is going on? And he was just going to kind of keep going along with everything. But he finally, like, decided to do something, and I was like, oh, shit. You know, he straight up... It was Caleb that murdered that guy at Insight, right? The earpiece guy?
Yeah.
we saw him like 2 times, and it made it seem like he was supposed to be important, and then Caleb fucking
He like backflipped him and he
yeah
broke his
Oh
back
yeah,
and neck
on the steps.
stairs.
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, damn, okay, fuck. I thought he didn't do personals, but now he's doing personals.
Well, that whole time that he was doing stuff at the end, I was just like, he's doing personals. This is why he doesn't do personals.
Because when he does personals, he can't stop doing personals. His insatiable bloodlust. I know, and I thought Aaron Paul did a pretty good job this season. Other stuff that I've listened to and read about the season said that they were looking for him to accompany, or like they feel like he does a really good everyman, where he brings everybody in on to like the ground level of stuff. And I thought he did a really good job with that, especially in the episode where you find out like what actually happened to him, like the re-education thing that he went through, where him and his friend kidnapped that guy, and then the guy was telling him what happened and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that episode was fucking cool as shit. Like, those first 5 episodes for me probably did one of these, but those last couple I thought were like really well done. I enjoyed them a lot. So all of the Caleb stuff in that penultimate episode, I think, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I liked Caleb. He wasn't my favorite character in Westworld. He wasn't even the most interesting.
No?
But I love Aaron Paul, and I think he did a really good job, and I like what he brought to the role. Caleb having to like kill his friend in Francis, I thought was a really interesting part to it. And it, because at a certain point you're thinking his character's going one way, and immediately in the beginning I was like, well, he was definitely not in the military, or like
Right.
not in the military the way that they're showing us he was. So I'm glad that we come to find out that he was doing a ton of personals and they were just wiping his memory.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And I also fucking loved the episode where he takes the drug genre.
Okay.
I thought that was so cool.
I was going to ask how we felt about that episode.
That was cheesy.
I thought it was a cool episode. And I thought like watching them affect him was interesting, falling through the different genres. Just wish there was like a little bit more to it than what we got. But I enjoyed what we got, and I'm satisfied with it because I thought it was enough. But had they done a little bit more leaning into the genres with like costuming or something that really made it seem like he was tripping balls, would have been really cool. But I like what we got. Satisfied with it. Not saying it was bad at all. I liked it.
Joe, you thought it was cheesy?
I did. It felt like just a very like cheeseballs sci-fi, like, oh, it's this drug that makes you think you're in a movie. And like, but then like hearing Robert say that, I feel better about it that they didn't lean in more. Because I feel like I imagine like there's a world where that could have been the entire episode was just like all his perspective, all genres, and it's like their version of like the like Scrubs musical episode, which like, and everybody did a musical episode, and like that works great for those kind of shows, but like it's a little bit of like not even jumping the shark because that's a whole different trope, but it just felt like it would have been too much. But I think you're right, like what they gave us was enough, and like it was healthy to see a reaction to it where like Dolores has to deal with him not being all there. So
I just think that had that been from his perspective, like entirely, it would have been more interesting than watching Dolores watch him deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to
Yes.
see that all happening in his head.
Absolutely.
Rather than watching Dolores look at him like, "Are you okay?" like 4 times. And then that was, I think, the second time that he saw her get shot. Or no, it was the first time he saw her get shot, but it was the second time that he realized something's up with this woman. And then, like, but because he was hallucinating and seeing things, I don't know that he knew what he saw. And that's one of the reasons I wish that we were looking at it from the way he was seeing it, because it probably would have played out in a way that made us go like, "Oh shit, now he knows she's a robot." But we knew that he was dealing with it, and he was just kind of standing there like so it didn't really have the same effect, I thought. But I liked that episode. That was like the beginning of where it started to get good for me.
Okay.
Any other like standout moments or episodes that we could think of?
I thought reusing lines is a thing that they did a lot of this season. And unless you watched seasons 1 and 2 right into season 3, I don't know if it's super effective. And there's a lot of things that do that in what they think is their final act, where they'll reuse lines from the beginning, and you're supposed to get the same emotional hit from them. And I don't think that it happened for most of this when they did it this season, because there's a lot of, apparently in episode 1 of this season, there are so many repeated lines.
There's a lot.
And all the way back to the first episode of the whole series. And I haven't watched that episode since 2016. So you're asking a lot of me. And not me, Robert, but me, the viewer, to remember the specific verbiage from the first episode to now.
But I don't think that necessarily ruined the experience.
Didn't ruin it.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's
but
one of those
knowing that
things...
they did that, just knowing that they did that, and like they were looking for that reaction, and I couldn't give it to them because how am I supposed to remember a line that was spoken 4 years ago?
Well, but they're not saying, hey, you should remember this, because if you don't remember this, you're not going to get it. But like, it's
just a reward.
Yeah, it's a reward, exactly.
For the people who do. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but I don't know that some of those lines necessarily help put forward the story they were telling this season. So it was at the detriment of the story they were telling now.
It depends on like the context of it.
Like, I know specifically the one line that gets repeated is, I don't know the line specifically, but I know one of the characters, God bless you, that says it is like Liam Dempsey's buddy while they're doing drugs at that highfalutin rich people party. And he says a line from like the first season that, when it was said in the first season, held some merit or held some weight, and then some random guy, however many years later this is, repeats that line and it doesn't mean the same thing, but they just wanted to reuse the line. And it just was like, I get that you thought it was good the first time around, so sure, use it again, it's yours, but it seemed weird. Because he has no connection to it. Like, Dolores repeating lines that were said to her makes sense. Bernard repeating things that Ford said makes sense. Them trading lines off with Maeve and Dolores as they work around one another, got it. But when random guy that has no connection to that park whatsoever says something one of the hosts said, it's like,
Yeah, but did that only happen like one time, or did that happen like throughout, where all these new characters are just saying the same thing?
I can't say for a fact one way or the other, but I know for sure that one guy did it, and I was like, eh.
Maybe he picked it up in the park.
True. Or
So
maybe
that's
he was told.
Yeah, somebody said one of the hosts said it to him, and he thought it was good. That was another thing. So they answered. Now we have the answer for all of the parks that exist within Delos. And I don't know. I liked that there was a medieval world, because in the original film Westworld there is a medieval world. So that was cool. I like the cameo from the creators of Game of Thrones, and I like the Drogon cameo.
Same.
I thought that was cool, and why not do that?
Exactly. It's like the blue meth in Walking Dead.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
why not just
Why
do
not?
that?
Fuck it.
I like the Jurassic Park reference.
Yes.
That
was
too.
Yeah, go to Costa Rica. It'll be fine.
I didn't like and was deeply unsatisfied with what that fifth park wound up being. The military training park. Where they get to run simulated tests to see what these guys would do in the field. And I think I would have been okay with it had they not given the entire reason for Dolores choosing Caleb being that one time he was one guy that decided to not rape a host. And that's why she knew he was good, because he was capable of making choices. And what I didn't like about that, more than anything, was when the fuck was Dolores in that park?
I think she had access to the data. Like, I think that was just like some like movie bullshit. Like, I don't think that was actually supposed to be a Dolores copy. I think they just made her that for that scene. That like she was like in that host's memory or whatever. Because I don't like that either. So I think I just choose to believe something else.
That makes no, like, and that's a really interesting way to put it, because I didn't even think that. I was immediately thinking like, oh, she was there.
I definitely got the impression from how I believe they presented it,
Yeah.
was that she was one of the hosts that didn't get raped that day.
And that annoyed
And
me
that's-
too.
Because that was such a fucking paper thin, like...
But the way that Joe just explained it, like, if that is the case, that's super interesting to me.
Because she was there with the woman from, I think it was it last season in the Akai no Mai episode?
Yes.
Like, that woman was there.
Yes.
And she was next to Dolores, whose hair was, like, done in a way that was supposed to indicate she's not the farmer's daughter here. She's Americana girl, or whatever her name was. Probably Julie or something.
Yeah.
And I just was like... And then that when they gave the explanation for why... Because you're able to choose, Caleb. And I was just like, that does not work with... Because...
I could do like more like mental gymnastics though, that like Caleb wasn't like the only one who like wasn't like was kind to her or whatever. Like she might have had a list of candidates, and like then like going
She
through
stumbled upon Caleb and was like,
not
I
even
remember
that.
him.
Like I mean,
Good,
like
good
based
guy.
on like where she was going to be, like everything that like she had access to, you know, where he was going to kill himself. Like she could have worked out like, this is the most ideal candidate for me to get my plan done. And again, like based on what we were shown, you're completely right.
None of
It was
that's
all
fair.
bullshit. But in order to try to enjoy this more, that's what I think.
I think you did a really good job writing it for them, Joe. Because I don't believe that was what was presented to us. But I like it. If that were the case, and like when they panned back across and it wasn't Dolores anymore, I'd be like, oh, she could see their past. You know, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
But
or he like opens a door in Bernard's basement and there's some guy and he goes, who the hell are you? Oh, I'm here in case you die. I'm the next runner-up to run the new human race.
Yeah, if they had presented it that way, that would have been cool. I like the idea. I don't know if I could even say that. I understand the idea of having one of the parks being a place where Delos has a cash cow in a government contract. Like, that makes sense on any level that you want. A business sense. It makes sense that the government would want to have a park where they could kill all the things that they want to train for the military, rather than actually, like, using those standee things or real people. You know, so, like, I get it. I just, like, I don't know. The mystery surrounding what the parks were was so much fun. And that being the answer to one of them is kind of like...
Yes and no, because initially I felt the same way, but the more that I sat and thought on it, the more I was like, ultimately it doesn't matter because we're not going to that park.
Nope.
So
it doesn't matter, and you're right. And we're never going to go to that park other than
because we got to see like Maeve in Warworld, which was really cool. But we didn't need to see like an in-depth look at that Americana world. Or whatever.
There was just like the idea that there's another theme that they could have had for a park, which would have been like the Raj was really cool. Warworld being Nazi occupied Italy, which is like hyper specific, is interesting as a decision. All of them, like
World.
Shogun World, like all of them are super cool and different. So then to get that one was just kind of like... Wah, wah.
Another thing, too, people could go to that park, I'd imagine. Like,
I don't think
think
consumers are allowed in that park. That is a government entity. That is strictly for military training.
Okay. Joe, what'd you think of that?
Of the military thing?
Yeah.
I thought it made sense. It wasn't like the most exciting. It was just kind of like but like I think being given like 4 other intricate worlds, I thought it was fine for something to make sense. Especially like when you find out like, you know, Delos wasn't really doing so hot, so like they definitely depended on that kind of stuff. So yeah, I didn't really take issue with that, and I thought it was a convenient way to finally tie together those 2 stories about how Caleb was drawn into the mix.
Yeah, because it was like, why him the whole time?
What did you guys think about Sirach as like the season-long villain?
I like Sirach. I really did. I thought he was very interesting. I just thought, like, the way that he decided to go about doing what he wanted was just, like, the most ass-backwards way to get anything accomplished.
By having Maeve go as his, like, hand?
Liaison? Like,
yeah.
But it goes back to what Joe said about Maeve. Like, she was... What a terrible way to use that character. I mean, great that they used her. Because I like seeing Tandy Newton. She acted the fuck out of everything that she had this season. And I liked the not real Lee Sizemore in the VR world. I thought that was great that they brought him back. I got really fucking confused the first time I saw him. And then it turned out that whole episode was that episode of Rick and Morty where they're inside a simulation inside a simulation. And then she did the exact same thing that they did in Rick and Morty, overload the simulation
to escape the simulation. Yeah,
I couldn't believe that.
I couldn't unsee it.
You didn't see that?
No. I said I couldn't unsee that.
Yeah.
I sat there the whole time going, "This is just Rick and Morty."
At a certain point, Maeve was like, if your name is Jeff, jump on your right foot, and if you have a red shirt, jump on your left. Like, oh, I was like, what the fuck? They did the whole thing, like the whole episode was that. I thought it was fucking crazy. But that's just why Rick and Morty's really good sci-fi.
That's not even.
I was cool with it.
That's not
though.
even fiction though. That's just science. Like any game, that's how you
Right.
break it. You just push
You
it.
would overload the system. I really liked Maeve taking control of that weird robot thing.
Yes.
Oh, the drone with the guns.
Yeah. That was fucking neat. And then, like, as they're standing over it, pumping that fucking thing full of bullets, I really felt like we lost a character and we only knew it for 5 seconds. Like, I really felt bad for it. They made me feel like it was Maeve.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And then the behind the episode thing on that, they had a guy mocap that. So it was a real dude
And
in
really shot him.
a one of those mocap costumes.
Yeah.
And that's why the movements were so seemingly fluid and natural because it was coming from a real person.
Yeah.
And then, like, when you watch that scene back again, I was like, fuck, that was so cool. That was so cool. But Sirach. Sorry. Yeah, I thought his story was interesting. I thought his brother as a linchpin character was a really good way to do that. I thought his motivations were not obscured for the most part. I like that he kept using the projections of himself rather than his actual self. And there was definitely a moment in the last episode where I was like, they're going to try to kill him and he's not there. And then he was definitely there because he was bleeding everywhere. I was like, what a mistake that was for a guy that uses projections of himself all the time. Fatal fucking flaw on that one. Good God. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be there for the end. Like, he knew it was the end.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting that the choice to have him pretty much like give up his own choices. Like, he gave himself completely over to that algorithm. And that was really interesting that he just chose to be a puppet. And like, I don't
that.
I don't know if he gets like breaks or whatever where it's like, okay, go have fun with all the money that we made today.
Right.
Or if it's just like, keep your headpiece in, Sirach, it's bedtime now.
Well, only if the algorithm told him it was a good idea to go have fun with all the money they gave him, then he would.
Like
I'm
a nervous
going to
kid,
spend
like
this money ridiculously, and then he would do it. I also thought like it was super badass that he was like mega French. Like, that was fun. Because definitely needed subtitles sometimes for him. Because I was like, what did he say?
they went back to that old disaster movie trope of like Paris is always the first thing to go.
It's poor him.
Dude, the visual of that was fucking really
Yeah, that
good.
was nuts. Especially like
brother-
after watching Chernobyl last year, it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to finish that.
Like them playing on like that hillside and just seeing the fucking that mushroom cloud over their city. Like, I was like, fuck, dude, that was heavy.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
His whole backstory really interested me, and I kind of hope he comes back next season because I don't think we didn't see him die.
We did not see him die. We
until
saw him
we
get
get-
stabbed and be hurt really bad, but not
until
die.
we get an on-screen funeral and they lower him into the ground and bury him. I don't
Bagpipes
believe
or
it.
whatever the French equivalent, French horns.
It's French, it must be what they do.
I thought he was cool. So I feel like definitely for I don't know that you can make a case to bring Evan Rachel Wood back, right? Like, she's done.
Yeah.
The only thing I could see them doing, and I'd be mad about it, because I thought Dolores and the way that she went out was really, really fitting for that character.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a great beginning and an end for her.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing that I could see them doing is having the Lawrence version of Dolores build herself a new body.
Yeah. Because he's the only one left.
Because everyone else is done.
Which I was kind of sad about, because I got fucking real hype when Musashi came back.
Yeah.
Real hype, dude. I was like, fuck yeah, this guy was awesome. And then they're carrying his head out, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Interesting note. The goo factory that Musashi was running, where he was importing and exporting goo, like for host creation.
Milk.
The name of it in Japanese means like the one with two faces or something like that, or like of two minds or whatever the fuck.
Wow.
Which I was like, shit, that's neat.
That's cool.
I forget that it was like, it started with an I. It was like IND, something like that. But if you look up what that word means in Japanese, it's something like of two minds or whatever. So they definitely, if you know Japanese words and you were reading the sign, you were like, oh, wait a minute, that's where another Dolores is going to, like, it would have totally fucking ruined that surprise for you.
Japanese people walking by like, what the fuck do they make in there?
It's my goo!
See, I did not mind the Dolores twist, but I also don't think that was their original plan.
I definitely don't think.
And I feel
Really?
like it's one of those situations, like, on the fly, we gotta change something here.
it was the more convenient answer for them,
Yeah.
rather than the more creative answer for the story.
But that being said, I don't think it was a bad twist or whatever. I enjoyed it, and it made sense to me because I think the character of Dolores would not trust anyone else other than herself at this point, and she wasn't going to try to change anyone else to fit that mold after the Teddy thing that happened in season 2. I think that was the final straw that broke the camel's back in her mind and the way that she viewed the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And viewed free will and stuff like that.
It's just, to me, like, it just didn't sit right. That, like, this big question, and then we have the whole episode with Charlotte, and we still don't know. And then for it to be revealed after that, like, so Tessa Thompson had to act like Evan Rachel Wood doing Dolores, but like a baby version. And we couldn't appreciate that performance because we didn't know what she was doing.
But you can go back now.
I don't like the idea of TV being, but if you watch it again.
But you could go back and do that with season 1.
No, I know. I mean, if you go back
and
and watch season 1 now, it's blatantly fucking obvious that William is the Man in Black. But that was the most fun fucking thing in season 1, was pounding my fist at episode 6 going, they're the same fucking person, I'm telling you! And then when it finally happened, the just like euphoria of seeing the thing and calling the thing. Because in season 1 specifically, there were times where William would do something, and then when they would transition, it would be Ed Harris finishing that movement.
Yeah.
And then they did the put the hat on and take it off, and they're the same guy. And I was like, fuck, because that was the best thing ever. And I don't know if it's just the rush of that being the reason why I feel like everything else has fallen short. But like Joe had said earlier, it wasn't necessarily a mystery to be solved. It was just twisting. Just twist.
Just waiting for them to tell us.
Yeah. So like towards the end of it, like what was the movie? There was a movie I watched recently where I was like, I can't wait for the last 30 minutes of this so it's fucking resolved and I know what's happening. Like just when you're dealing with it at that level, it's just like it gets annoying. You're just like, I know that it's gonna be a thing. Like, what's the fucking thing?
Do you think that if Westworld went in the direction of a more mystery-esque thing, like something that needs to be solved, like
Yeah.
the maze,
Yeah.
rather than like what's the plan here in this action story.
Yep.
You'd be
Way
more
way
satisfied.
better. I feel like that's the root of what the show is. Was that first season was trying to, I always think of like in my head like a Rubik's Cube. Like that's what that first season was, trying to put all of the things on one side so you could see the whole picture. Like that's what that first season was, because I think very visually. So that's what that was to me. The second season was a little bit less of that. And then this season was just, there was none of that, I felt like. It was just, did I miss the thing? What was the thing? And that was it. And I just feel like narratively this show is more fun doing mystery. Like, we need to figure out what X is. And that's where you get your fan theories that go, and then people like I feel like that's when people more enjoy watching a show, is that level of investment. But trying to call out twists before they happen, and then the showrunners knowing that people try to call out twists before they happen, so they seemingly try to write ahead of the smart fan in terms of making sure that you can't see the twist. Like, I don't know if that's a tenable way to keep a television program going.
Yeah.
Trying
I
to stay
agree.
ahead of your smart fans rather than, like, maybe just throw them a fucking bone. You know?
Yeah. I agree, and I think to a degree they've got to step away from we got to think 10 steps ahead, and then hide the first 8 steps before, like, just
like, where can we
just to
bury
try to
this
make
thing
it not
happening?
predictable.
Yeah.
But it's, like, so hard to do with any form of media nowadays.
And I mean, I'm sure if they went 3 straight seasons of what's the mystery to solve, there would be people that would be complaining about how it's the same thing over and over again. But
that's why I'm so accepting of this, because it's like, we need to world build. We want...
yeah, but I just feel like
adventure.
there's definitely a creative way to continue to do that in this situation. Like, it could have been a very creative way for them to figure that out. But something else that I learned about this season was that there was a different executive producer than the other 2 seasons. And I don't remember her name off the top of my head.
She was around for seasons 1 and 2, but not in, like,
that level.
an authoritative role.
Right. And I think
she came on.
And I think with the Nolans having other things to work on, they may have leaned on her more for what this season became. And not to say that it was bad, because I don't think that any show that they put this level of work in is bad.
Yeah.
Because it's completely unfair to say, with the amount of work that they put into it, with the location scouting, with all of the post-production work that they have to do, all of the actor performances, to go, this season was bad, is not fair. It was good in parts for me. I think that everybody did a great job, other than that driving overarching narrative through it was the part that slipped the most.
That's fair. Joe, any final thoughts on season 3 of Westworld?
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with almost everything Robert said. And you hit a good point that, like, I don't necessarily want the same thing happening every season. I really don't want them. I don't need them to, engage me in the same ways every time, but I do feel like I need to feel engaged when I'm watching this show. So I don't think this was a bad season of television, and to your point, like the amount of money and work that they've all put into this, it had better not be bad.
Right.
But I do hope that there's like a change of course in the next season. And I don't think I want it to go back because, doubling back is just going to mean that, season 4 is probably going to be their last season.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really want more of what we saw this season. And if I knew how to do that right, I would probably be working for HBO.
Well, as far to my understanding, the season 2 viewership never hit the season 1 viewership, so it didn't bring more people in season 2, and this season was even less than season 2. So there's no amount of word of mouth that's happened for it.
Well, everybody canceled their subscriptions after Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And
So it hasn't been like, there's definitely shows that exist that do one of these with viewership, and Westworld is the complete opposite of that. And I also believe that this season was operating on a much more limited budget than previous seasons, which is interesting that scouting locations costs less than having a Western saloon fucking stage setup.
Yeah.
Like, it costs less to put them in Singapore and fly everybody the fuck over there than it is to have a fucking soundstage, apparently. But yeah, it's just, I just wanted to throw that idea out there because the viewership is not going upward for it.
Yeah.
So maybe doubling back, while it wouldn't be necessarily good from a narrative sense, where they like again change course to now we're doing mystery again, but maybe the viewership would be there for something where people get engaged.
I personally hope they continue forward into the new world, into this like post-apocalyptic type sandy buildings falling down type world.
Post Insight.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Maeve and Bernard, and even the Man in Black. I'm not so sure I'm sold on Charlotte being like the big bad of the next season.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm very intrigued, and I'm curious to see which way they're going to spin that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's probably going to be at least a few years before season 4, because I know the Nolans are doing other stuff.
Yep.
And then, like, Jeffrey Wright's obviously doing the Batman and all that other stuff. Like, everyone has stuff going on.
And there's a pandemic.
And there's a pandemic, whatever. But I'm optimistic for what we're getting now. Like I said, I'm more optimistic going from seasons 3 to 4 than I was 2 to 3.
Yeah.
So, flaws aside, overall, I enjoyed season 3 of Westworld. But like I said at the very beginning, it's definitely the weakest season.
Yeah, I was going to say, circling back to what Joe had said about how this is the bottom of the 3. I don't know of anybody that would rank them any differently than 1, 2, 3 right now. And that just is what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
It's super weird for a TV show.
Yeah.
Like, usually, 3 is when you hit your stride. That's your strongest season.
Yep.
To hear, season 1 is your best season is, so jarring. But,
Yeah, because I think of any TV show, that's the most absurd statement anybody could make about a TV show. Yeah. Oh, yeah, their first season was their best. That's not a thing that's said ever.
Yeah.
In any program, because you just have to kind of figure out what's... But I think that they had such a tight idea going in that there wasn't situations that arise with other TV shows where you're trying to figure out like chemistry with actors and things like that, and you're kind of writing it as you. I feel like season 1 was written. It was tight. They had it. They got the approval for it, and they just fucking went for that vision, and that was it. You know, they didn't have to compromise. It was HBO. And then going out of that, they had to figure those things out.
Yeah.
So maybe season 2 was the true season 1, where you have the struggle of finding those people that you put with certain people and that kind of thing. But to the point of liking season 3 less than season 2, it's only because season 2 had 3 episodes that were so fucking above the bar, and season 3 just having like a steady burn of like nothing is better than anything else, you know. But enjoyment level for me, those last 3 or 4 episodes was much higher, but like there was nothing that happened, or like there wasn't like a crazy concept episode like being in Shogun World in season 2 this season. Like that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, and the last thing I want to say before we get out of here, because you mentioned it earlier, was the Man in Black thing that happened early in this season. And that moment, like I had said, was like the thing that I was like, Westworld's back, baby. Where he was in a group therapy session, and I just
with himself.
Conceptually imagining that for yourself. Like, just think about if that were a thing that were possible for you specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you could sit as your present self with you as a kid, you as a young adult, you as a business professional, like when you're older, and then you as the person that you wanted to be, along with somebody that you knew better than anybody else. Like, as a concept for a group therapy session, that was such a deep mind fuck to watch.
Yeah.
And then for him to murder himself 4 times over was like, for me, I thought like that was such a fucking neat thought. Like, I loved every fucking thing about that.
Yeah.
Because I would love in the future to sit with myself like that and just see what that conversation was. Different eras of my brain, and see what happens in that discussion.
I have zero desire. That sounds like hell on earth. But
it does, but also like the present self killing off the younger ones, there also is a catharsis to ridding yourself of those demons and all of the things that they knew, because he was specifically ending all of their lives. Like, your thoughts are no longer matter, like I'm the only one that exists.
And then in the last episode
yeah, and then in the last episode, the person he always wanted to be came back to end him, which is like, fuck, that's so cool.
I thought that was a fitting end for that character, in my opinion.
For sure.
His like own creation, essentially.
It was
his worst version of him,
who he desired to be above all those other versions of himself, was the one that ended his actual life.
Yeah.
Which I think is fucking...
I kind of wish that scene was shorter, though. Like, I kind of wish that was a cliffhanger. Like him walking out of the shadows and then just cut,
rather than watching him get bludgeoned to death.
Right.
Well, it'll be interesting for season 4.
Yeah.
For sure.
To see all of that unfold. So that has been our season 3 Westworld review. For Pop Kannon, I'm Jordan.
I'm Robert.
And I am Joe.
If you want, be sure to follow us across all social media platforms at Pop Kannon. Don't forget the K. If you want to follow us individually, Jordan could be found on Instagram and Twitter at JL24FPS.
And if you'd like to tell me I'm wrong, You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Yesball.
And if you'd like to say in my DMs, K, you can hit me on Instagram or Twitter at Joe4FOR
So thank you again for watching or listening. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or hit the YouTube button, hit subscribe. Here,
Smash that subscribe button!
Keep seeing our faces during this uncertain time in life. But for Pop Cannon, we'll see you for episode 42.